Hey there, I'm Tyler and welcome to the channel. Today I got to make something like 35 or 40 doors. Alright, we got a lot to do. We got something like 200 parts that need to be cut up and assembled for all of these cabinet doors. And then I'm going to show you my process to get this pro style finish on these doors. The distributor that I got all of the hardwood for this project from has what they call cabinet facing material. This is poplar and they also have it in, I believe, cherry. And this, for the doors, we're using 2-inch wide poplar. I already have a piece milled out right here. And this is going to save an incredible amount of time. All we got to do is hack this up on the miter saw to the lengths that we want, then do a ton of routing to get our rails and stiles milled out. As you can see behind me, lots of parts cut out for the rails and stiles of these doors. Now in my test pieces, I realized that if I cut the rail ends, so the part that has the tongue on it last, I got a lot of chip out on the smaller end, as you can see right here. And I put quite a bit of thought into how I was going to reduce this, and then when I was getting ready to start cutting them all today, I realized, why don't I just cut those first, which I already had in the router table, and then I will go down and cut the groove on all the pieces afterwards, and that'll completely remove the tear out if there was any. But as you can see right here, there was no tear out as there was more mass on the end here and didn't chip out. I'm going to be using an adjustable router bit from Amana Tools, which I got from Tools Today. Big shout out to them for supplying this bit. And it's adjustable, like I mentioned, which is really awesome when you're doing a plywood panel insert, because even if you get a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch plywood, it's never exactly that. So like you see right here, you can adjust the spacing of this router bit with different shims so that you can get the perfect fit. To do the rail ends, I'm going to be using this cope and stick door sled, which allows me to butt my piece right up against the fence, clamp it down, and then I have good control and tear out mitigation on the end here with this sacrificial piece. You do have to make sure your router bit is set high enough to account for the base of this sled, but it is pretty easy to rock and roll once you get it set up. We have all of the tongues done on the rails, and it is time to cut a ton of grooves. Every single piece of the doors need these, unlike just the rails, which needed the tongues on the end. So we're going to change the bit out and we're going to get started. You're not going to get the alignment of your rails and stiles perfect the first time unless you're amazing. So I guess it is possible. So you're going to have to do a couple trial pieces and finesse your fit. So as you can see right here, a little bit high right there. So this is what we were just cutting, and it's upside down, so that means I want to raise the router bit, and I actually did already. This is what I did. There's actually 2 different sections, as you can see right here, so I stopped wasting boards. This one was still a little bit high. I raised the bit again, and this one could not be any better. Perfect. That's what we want. Could stand here for a couple of hours and cut all of the rails and stiles by hand, but I already did that doing all of the tongues yesterday. So I'm going to put my power feeder on the router table. Once all those rails and stiles are milled, it's time to break down the panel, which is going to go inside of all of that material once we get it glued up. I'm using 1/4-inch plywood, which is very thin and floppy when you're handling a big sheet like this, so be careful. And then something I learned the hard way is you want to sand this stuff down before you glue the door together so that you don't have to go back by hand and get in all of the corners. You can get that all with the random orbit sander when you have the panels out. Much, much easier. For the glue up, I'm going to grab a couple of decent clamps to make sure everything is nice and square, and then I am taking the 2 rails, so the top and the bottom, and applying glue on the tongue. I am using Tight Bond 1, doesn't really matter what you use, but that works great for me. Putting those 2 rails in and then inserting the panel and adding the other stile. I found this to be the best and most efficient way, and I've done a couple of doors if you've been around on the channel. Using a mallet to make sure everything is nice and flush. If you overextend something, don't just whack the inside with the hammer because you will damage the edge. Use a stop block like I showed you just there. And like I said, we had a couple of doors to do, but I was able to get them together fairly quickly. And then it was back to the random orbit sander to make sure any glue squeeze out was cleaned off. The joints were absolutely spectacular, so I needed very little sanding on the top and bottom where the joint face was visible. And cleanup is important to any good finish application. I like to use tack cloths. I've had no ill effects from this in the past, and I got these ones from Menards, I believe. You can get them in a contractor pack, which is super handy. Nice cleanup on all the corners and just stack all of the doors up ready for finish. We are going to be using General Finishes product to finish all of these cabinet doors like you saw me use in the carcasses and face frames in the last video. We're going to start out with 1 coat of their white undercoat, and this is the same as their sanding sealer, but it's got white pigment in it. Then we're going to do 2 coats of the Enduro Poly. This is a white poly that has been tinted to a custom color that we wanted. And then we will follow that up with a 3rd coat that is thinned down with a little bit of their accelerator to help everything smooth out a little bit better. We're going to be spraying the white undercoat, which is a very thick finish with a 1.8mm tip in the Fuji T70 gun. And I do believe I'm going to be using my largest PPS system cup. I don't use this very often because it is kind of awkward, but we have a lot of finish to put down today, and I would rather not be filling this up every couple of minutes. Everybody likes these little lids. There is a link to them down in the description below. They are fantastic, and there's links to the PPS stuff down there as well. I typically get a lot of questions when I use that stuff. Okay, so protecting yourself should be a given. I like this 3M full face shield because it keeps my eyes clean, which have been a problem in the past. And to set up the gun, I usually screw down the flow meter here till it's completely closed. I have a dot on the back right here. You probably can't see it. If you have the newer guns, there are numbers on the back. And I like to open it a 1.5 turns usually, and then we'll dial it back from there. We're gonna spray a quick fan pattern on here. I probably wanna go for something like an 7-8 inch fan here, and we wanna make sure we have a nice oval there and not any weird patterns because that will ensure we have even flow. Here you can see my fan patterns. I was opening and closing it a little bit. Here you can see there's a lot of spray on the side. Here you can see it's not exactly oval. And this is the one I ended up with right here. You probably can't pick it up on the camera, but there's a nice even spray in the middle, a little bit of overspray on the side, but I think we're gonna be good right there. Do remember this is sanding sealer or primer, so you're not gonna get beautiful coverage on this first pass. We just wanna make sure we get an even application over everything. So I'm gonna go across the material like this, and then depending on what the coverage looks, I might go perpendicular to that first pass to make sure I got good coverage over all of the material. You do wanna make sure you don't pile it up in the edge, as you will get cracks in the finish later on as it dries. So I was able to go over that material very quickly, which was awesome. So I'm happy with my product flow out of the gun. And I got up in the corners very well, kind of hard to see with this light here. and the camera settings, but it's looking pretty good. This is the back. I'm now going to lay it on the face on the drying rack, let it dry, spray all the backs, and then we'll flip it over and start on the fronts. This should take about 20 minutes to dry and allow us to stack them again without damaging the material. Once we had a coat of the white undercoat on all sides of the doors, it was time for sanding yet again. And this time you want to make very sure you got all the corners nice and clean so that you don't have any dust piles in there from your sanding. Sanding is very quick on this. You're just knocking down the raised grain. But again, a shot of air and then the tack cloth to really clean them up. And then it was time for our color application. We are going to do 2 coats at full viscosity, sprayed using the T75G gun and a 1.3 millimeter tip. Again, we're going to do 2 full coat strengths at this. Lots of doors, took quite a bit of time, and between these coats we didn't have to do any sanding. Typically you don't have to unless you wait more than 24 hours, and then you will have to sand so that you have good bonding. Okay, it is time for our last coat, which is going to go on exactly the same, but it's going to be thinned down with the General Finishes accelerator. And this just allows it to flow out a little bit better and gives us a slightly shinier finish. It's going to go on with the same 1.3 tip. You will probably just have to reduce your flow down maybe half a turn. Otherwise it will come out too thickly and you will lay down too thick a layer. So with the PPS system here, I have measurements on the side, and I'm putting 12 ounces in, and then I will put in 2 ounces of the General Finishes accelerator. You do want to make sure you mix this up, let it sit for 5 minutes, and mix it again. And make sure you mix very thoroughly, because that accelerator could sit on the top and you will get a shot of pretty much water right off the top if you don't mix it up very, very well. And that is a wrap on these doors. I do gotta say, turned out pretty fantastic. It looks like I got this combination from General Finishes down pat pretty well, as I'm able to get fantastic results whether it's a tinted color like this or a clear coat. And we were able to get them all transferred up north with no issues, and we installed them all with soft close hinges in the living room and in the kitchen. Alright, that was a wrap, and by golly, that was a big project. I do think, and it saddens me a little bit, that this is the last video of the lake house refurbish. We are pretty much done up there, although there's still no lake to be had up there, which is kind of sad. But I do think we're done, and projects are going to move back home here, where we do have quite a bit of stuff to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and it helped some of you out if you got to make a whole bunch of doors just like that. If it did, please hammer that thumbs up button, as it helps us out and gets this video in front of more eyes. As always, make sure you spray finish or don't do it at all. I'm DIY Tyler. You guys have a good one.